This issue of economic valuation metrics, I think, is
Yeah.
fascinating. And I think it's the way we, in a town like Westport, where half the town may never have even been
Yeah.
on the Westport River. And we also have, I mean, one of the things you also hear is that there's other bodies of water in Westport besides the Westport River. There's freshwater ponds all over the place. And so we have to start thinking in those terms as we're not just protecting the river, we've got to protect these waters too.
Yeah.
And so this evaluation metric thing, I'm just wondering how you even begin to approach that if you're not a scientist or an economics major. Do you guys, have you developed any tools or any way to frame that whole approach to evaluate that stuff?
Well, we partnered with someone who was an economic person. So, you know, that they have each one of our regional planning councils throughout the state of Florida has an economic valuation model. My guess is that it's a model that was developed in California. It's being used by a lot of different groups. Certainly I can send that report along if you're interested in it so you can see what the model is. It's called REMI, R-E-M-I. And it is one that is being used by a lot of different communities and agencies. So it's a standard model you use. Actually, there's quite a bit of public input that goes into it because you have to figure out, you know, how important a sector is for, you know, how linked is a sector to the health of the bay. So if you're a fisherman, there's a really strong link there. If you're industrial, you know, plant, maybe you use cooling water, but a healthy bay doesn't matter as much as, you know, just having the water there. And so you have to have that sort of input into it. But that was a public process that was quite effective. It took about a year to run that model, but and it's certainly not the only model out there. But we were able to ask that question, not just what the value of the bay is, but how much added value is a healthy bay. Yeah. You want me to just take some? Yeah. I'll just
So
go
what
over
were the
this way.
sectors that were the biggest part of that 13 billion or whatever that came out of that?
Yeah, tourism is big in the Tampa Bay area. Also, shipping was big, and that was an element that was an important aspect there. The biggest part though was residential housing, you know, and real estate value. Real estate value. We also found that, for instance, if a restaurant was located on the bay versus half a mile away from the bay, they could charge premium prices for being on the bay. Now, it used to be, you know, in the 70s, there weren't any restaurants on the bay. I mean, you didn't go there. You know, you wanted to be far away from that. So that dynamic has changed since the improvements of the bay itself. But housing and tourism and restaurants are some of the major elements there.
So many of our efforts here seem to be focused town by town, and you've accomplished something over a 6-county area. I'm wondering what the principal driving force would have been to get all those governments together to enact some of the legislation.
Yeah. In our case, it was agreement to that goal, the Seagrass goal, that was important, that all of the cities and counties around Tampa Bay recognized that clear water and additional seagrass would be something important to their county or city. And so the recognition of we have to work together to address this goal that we all agree to was a really important aspect of that. So a common goal is really important. At least it was for us, yeah. Joe?
Holly, comment question. The comment is, I just want to say that the work in Tampa Bay during the 1970s and 80s was tremendously influential when we were developing our management plan in the 1990s here in Buzzards Bay. And in fact, the Buzzards Bay Coalition's Water Quality Index, when we were first setting that up for Buzzards Bay, we were looking for a nice indicator to communicate the results to the public. And the Buzzards Bay health index is precisely based on the Hillsborough County Water Quality Index. We tweaked it, we modified it, and put some things.
That's
But my question is, a couple of things on the graphs caught my eye. Christian and Rachel have been looking at the water quality databases, and scientists are looking at it. In the Northeast here, we're having some pretty dramatic shifts in temperature, some shifts in precipitation. And I was looking at one of your graphs, and I noticed that your atmospheric deposition is going down.
Yeah.
And you're also talking about El Nino. Can you just talk about like the shifts in precipitation, or if there's any exacerbating effects of the temperature or precipitation or the time of precipitation that is exacerbating water quality separate from the nitrogen load in the watershed?
Yeah. We have seen a longer summer, a longer periods of warmer weather, but it's not statistically significant at this point. It looks like the trend is toward hotter water for a longer period of time. The recent blooms that we saw, in the 2009-2011 period. Some very recent research that was done by some folks at the University of South Florida indicate that that particular species of algae has been around for a long time, but because the water is warmer now for a longer period of time, we may be seeing bloom conditions of that particular species. It's called pyrodinium, but it's a species that we've always had, but it only recently has started to bloom. So we may be seeing other things like this too that come up, that as our water temperature changes or is hotter for a longer period of time, some species of algae that have just been sort of in the background may become more prevalent and even to bloom conditions like they have in Old Tampa Bay. So I think we're just starting to see some of the potential impacts there now, I think that as we go over time, it's going to be really important to take a look at not only at chlorophyll A, which is an indication of all the different kinds of phytoplankton in the water column, but the individual species, and looking at whether we're seeing some changes in the response because of differences in water temperature as well as water quality. And so we'll go around there in the background.
You indicated in your bar chart that point source hydrogen pollution had been substantially reduced, but I noticed the bars on non-point source are about the same size all the way across. So I'm guessing that this million population growth in a counterintuitive way may be your friend in terms of money available for new plant construction or upgrading and all that kind of thing, which addresses the treatment plants. But what about people's lawns and nitrogen runoff, which is more the problem we have here? This isn't a rapid growth area with all sorts of new infrastructure going in. It's more, how do we deal with this pervasive amount of just
residential growth.
Yeah.
And I think that is why we are seeing in the non-point source here has remained relatively constant over time. That I think on a per acre basis, we're seeing lower yields, lower amounts of nitrogen coming out, but we're seeing more of the residential area. So it's sort of a wash. We have not seen a reduction in primarily residential runoff.
Maybe that's a victory. You're saying you've got a lot more acreage.
Yeah, that's right.
The same amount. So what's going on to reduce the per acre?
Yeah. A couple different things. Our municipalities are implementing more and more regional stormwater systems where you'll collect stormwater from a large residential area and then run it through a series of treatment train effects for reducing the amount of nitrogen in that. And also I think recently it is that we're focusing on how people, educating people how they manage their lawns, and especially with the fertilizer ordinance coming into effect in the last couple of years. We don't see it yet in this graphic, but I think that we are seeing a yield per acre that is going down, but more acres, so it's sort of staying the same.
Is there regulation or incentives that's driving those community
the residential stormwater, or not residential stormwater, the residential fertilizer those are county ordinances. And so there is a restriction on the amount, when you can put down nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizer. And so that is a county ordinance. You know, the counties and the cities struggle with how do you enforce that, and that is why some of them have enacted a point of sales restriction also during that period of time. We do an awful lot of education. We've got a social marketing campaign called Be Floridian, and I know I was talking with Rob a little bit about this coming in. It is focused on, we did a lot of market research in terms of what makes, you know, what do people respond to in terms of messaging about how you manage your lawn. And if you tell them, well, it's great for the bay, you know, some people go, yeah, that's great. It's a small percentage though. If you tell them, if you fertilize less, you don't have to mow as much, and you have more time for yourself, you know, protect fun is what we call it. And so, you know, that message is part of our social marketing campaign for the fertilizer ordinance. Is that you know, by fertilizing less or putting more of your lawn in Florida-friendly landscaping that you don't have to fertilize or water, that you're saving yourself time and effort, and you can spend it on the things you like to do, like go fish in the bay. And so that's, you know, that's the focus of that social marketing campaign called Be Floridian, and it's now being used throughout the state of Florida in terms of a way to get people engaged with thinking differently about how you manage your Florida lawn, which is different than your Rhode Island lawn. So, yeah.
The role of agriculture.
Role of agriculture, yeah.
You
Yeah.
talk about residential development.
Yeah. We do have row crops and citrus in the Tampa Bay area. Agriculture has actually been a very big part of this solution because they have, because of water restrictions, they've reduced the amount of water that they're putting on their crops through microjet irrigation. It's different than cranberry bogs, but it is a reduction in the amount of water, and with the reduction in the amount of water, there's also a reduction in the runoff. And so we have seen a reduction in agricultural lands overall, a quite significant reduction in the amount of nitrogen coming off of agricultural lands, primarily due to changes in watering practices with microjet irrigation rather than flooding the fields. So, you know, that's again, that's been an important aspect. We don't talk about it as much as residential because that's the piece that's growing so much for us right now is residential. Important part though. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, the seagrass restoration was a worthy goal that got people motivated. Now that you've hit it, are you happy with where the bay is? Did you get where you wanted to be based on sort of that goal? Was that sufficient?
Yeah, the fishermen think so. Fishermen think that the fishing is much better than it was. You know, I think that and people ask me, well, now that you've met the goal, what do you do now? You know, and it's, we try to maintain it. Is what we, you know, that's what we do now. But we are looking at other goals associated with seagrass, like ensuring that the grasses are persistent rather than ephemeral, you know, because they do come and go, that sort of thing. And so there are quality aspects to the seagrass. We've got different species of seagrasses. Some of them are more weedy than the ones that are later on in succession. So we're trying to take a look at whether a goal of ensuring that our seagrasses are persistent over time is an important one also, as well as just hitting the goal. So people go, did you set your goal too low? And as well, it's taken us 27 years to get here and a lot of work. So I don't think so. We have a lot of other issues that we're focusing on now in terms of habitat up in the watershed. Somebody mentioned the ponds, you know, up in the watershed, so we're focusing on that also. So this is just one of many focus areas, but this was a real major one for us.
Back in your worst case, when you were able to mobilize citizens and private-public partnerships, what, I mean, we saw some of the slides of what it looked like, but how Was there a ton of that? Was there odor?
Yeah.
What was it that triggered? Because one of our issues, and Mark talked about it, is, until
not
there's
visible,
an
yeah.
odor in the bay, people don't notice. A lot of people, we have less shellfish, we have less eelgrass, we need tangible ways to let the public
Yeah.
know, that our bay is dying.
Yeah. There was really no action until, there were concern by some citizens, but it really took the bay getting to the state that you saw it was, where it at that point, macroalgae was washing ashore, it smelled, there were fish kills, so there was a lot going on at that time. And one of the questions that I usually ask groups like this is it going to take a disaster before people really get motivated to go? And I hope not. And I'm really encouraged by this group because you're not at the disaster stage yet. But how do you motivate to get going on that? And I think an important message here is that it's not one piece, that you need to work on. It's a lot of different angles, and trying to encourage a collaborative approach that everybody contributes what they can has in terms of nitrogen reduction projects. One of the things that we did that was really important was we developed a database of all the different projects in the watershed and estimated the amount of nitrogen that was being reduced by those projects, so that a city could say, oh, you guys are doing that? Well, you could do that here, and so it was really important to share what everybody was doing, and to have that in a form that you could take a look at across the board, that it wasn't just this city or this area that was working on things, but everybody was working on something. So, and that encouraged people to do more also, I think. So sharing information about what you're doing and trying to quantify that in some way, so that you could take a look at how much is an estimate of how much is being reduced by the actions that you're already doing, was a real powerful thing to do for us. Yeah.
Following on the last couple questions, I love the idea of the message of protect fund, and I'm trying to, you've had a lot of years of experience of communicating with the public about nitrogen pollution, and so I'm curious, and that seems like a great message. What other messaging tools have worked for you, and what sort of, is it really emphasizing the seagrass, or how much do you talk about different sort of?
It depends on the audience. It really does. A lot of our elected officials now are very key to the seagrass, because we show these graphics whenever we can. Every year, our stoplight graphic comes out, and people really are, is my area green or red? And so it's that awareness of these different types of metrics that you're showing has been really important for elected officials and for, I would say, engaged citizens. But that the 50% that may not be as engaged, they're still important to the overall process, and trying to find out what a message is. We actually did quite a bit of work with communities to find out what that message would be. And for us, it was more the protect fun, type of thing. But I think that's probably unique, for each area. So we developed surveys and talked with individuals, actually hired someone to do a survey for us. So we've got a lot of social marketing, especially with Be Floridian, but with other pieces too, that depend on how you send out your message for helping recover the bay. Sometimes you don't even mention the bay, so yeah.
I'm curious, the consortium that came together to